Hi, everyone. My name is Kirk Bachman, and welcome back to The Ultimate Dish. Today, I'm speaking with Dan Pelosi, better known as the Italian-American meatball behind GrossyPelosi on social media. Dan's affinity for colorful foods first started in his family kitchen, creating home-cooked meals with his Italian and Portuguese-American parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents. While completing his bachelor's degree in fine arts at Rhode Island School of Design and studying abroad in Italy, Dan's love for cooking reignited. Fast forward to today, Dan is a full-time content creator, a recipe developer, and a writer, fostering a bright community, over 100,000 followers on Instagram through the natural comfort and connection of food. Now, with several brand partnerships, a merch line, and his debut cookbook, Let's Eat, Pelosi always lives here now, as he famously says. Dan is also the video host of Food 52 series, The Secret Sauce, where he travels across the tri-state area to visit Food 52 community members to share their most beloved recipes and cook together. With a larger-than-life infectious personality, Dan has made appearances on the Drew Barrymore show, Rachel, and Good Morning America. His work has been featured in Food and Wine, Real Simple, The Washington Post, The New York Times, and Bloomberg, just to name a few. So join me today as we speak with Dan about leaving his design job to pursue his brand, the heartwarming stories behind his cookbook recipes, and so much more. And there he is. I rushed through it because I can't wait to talk to you.
Hello. That was like such a soothing, like wonderful intro. It was very sort of like Mr. Rogers putting his shoes on, like very, I feel just like at ease.
I could do it again.
I almost could. It's like I want to fall asleep to that every night.
Oh, I love it. We could make that happen.
How narcissistic would that be if I just fell asleep to you introducing me on a podcast every night? I mean,
we've got bigger problems than Dan, if that's going to be good for you.
Exactly.
Hey, before we get started, first a big thank you. I know you're rushing around, just got back from vacation. Yeah. But if I don't have you say hello to my wife, Gretchen, and blow her a kiss, she's going to leave me for Drew Barrymore.
Oh, wait, do we want her to leave you for Drew Barrymore? No, we don't. Hi, Gretchen.
I love it. I can't describe how excited we are. The full body chills, the whole bit. We've all been fans, the whole family for a long time. My 12-year-old boy, Joseph Henry, wears this all the time.
There it is.
I mean, there's something to be said. Let's kick off with that. Don't yuck my yum.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, right? Don't yuck my yum.
Don't do it. I think I sort of am uniquely positioned, and maybe I'm self-appointed, but I just kind of mom the internet a little bit. I have a very maternal or paternal energy. And I think I lead with that. And I think that people sometimes in my yard, which is my space, my Instagram, I find come with sort of bad manners. So in order to protect my peace, and hopefully to protect the peace of others, I sort of started saying, don't yuck my yum. Like, I'm sharing my joy. If you don't like it, you can hold your opinion to yourself. You could move on. You could unfollow. But if you're going to come here and just tell me you don't like what I'm making, that's not the point of what I'm doing, So
no, it's so well said, and such a great lesson for young kids today too, who get hassled a lot, right, and get shamed a lot. So that's where it comes from for my son.
Yeah, it's a great lesson it goes way beyond food, like I actually just sold that Don't Yuck My Yum merch during Pride Month because, what better message during Pride Month than Don't Yuck My Yum? Yeah. And so I just think it's such a great lesson. Unless someone is harming someone or doing something horrible, really, we should be able to enjoy what makes us happy. So, yeah.
And so channeling that, where does just in general, where's the energy come from? It's you come into the room and people sit up and they're excited about it. So have you always been like this? Is this just part of your DNA?
To everyone in my childhood and throughout my life, I've always been sort of like social, talk to everyone, joking, putting on shows. Even when I was like a teenager and college, people were always like, oh my gosh, like you should be on TV or you should, do this or that. That's sort of like, and so it's sort of been my energy, and it comes from my dad, who was a high school teacher. And every single one of his students loved him, and his classes were like a show. And so I think that sort of like positive, jokey, fun, connecting with people energy is comes from my dad. It comes from my grandfather. I grew up around a lot of that. And so I think it's makes me happy to make people smile. It's also easy and it's also free. So,
Yeah. 3 lessons right off the bat so I write this stuff down, right? Because we're in front of, thousands of students that have a lot of questions and they need inspiration and motivation, push, pull, the whole bit. But I love the way that you refer to your space as your yard.
Yeah.
I love the show and I love the manners. We need to talk about that more. Manners everywhere, right? Not just in social media, in the grocery store, in the parking lot, in the classroom, right? Where did that come from? Your attention to that sort of detail.
It for me, it came from my audience grew really fast. And suddenly I had a lot of opinions. And at the same time, I was consistently hearing that I was a safe space and a space of joy for people. And so I knew pretty quickly that if I were going to be able to sustain being a place of joy and a place of safety for people, and this was during the pandemic and when I really sort of got my rise, that I would have to pretty clearly state what would make me unhappy. And so I think it's classic boundaries, right? So it's like you are allowed to say what works for you and what doesn't work for you and let people decide if they want to stick around or if they want to leave. And I think that has really helped me grow my community really successfully. I hope that everyone who sticks around does it because they hear me clearly state what works for me and what doesn't, as sort of this person who's sharing all of this stuff. And I think it has so far. And when it doesn't, I let people know and I let everyone know. I'm like, listen, if you're coming here to just like tell me that, to my face as I'm eating a lobster roll with a smile on my face in the middle of summer, and you respond like, I don't like lobster, or, oh my gosh, the only lobster rolls that matter are the ones from Maine, or like, it's just that diminishing of joy. I just can't, like, it just really kills me. And so I need to tell people that. And then it's like, okay, I've said it and I feel better and it keeps me able to do what I do. So it's not simple, but I think a lot of people have a hard time expressing their boundaries. So
yeah, no, I appreciate the explanation. My wife always says that no one can make you feel a certain way, right?
Yeah.
Only you can
Totally.
feel a certain way. So I appreciate that. It's incredibly thoughtful. Tell me about the Tillamook slices of summer. I mean, anyone who spent any time in the state of Oregon absolutely understands Tillamook, right?
Absolutely. I do a lot of fun brand partnerships. It's a lot of the way that I make my money. And I think that when you have a really great audience and a great group of people who are with you, they want to know what you like. And then you suddenly get to become like your own little advertising firm, which is such a dream because my background is creative. So I feel like I'm just totally having the best time. And Gaby and I were asked to do something together with Tillamook, which is so unique because usually I'm sort of doing it on my own. But when we got to collab, especially with someone who I consider such a great friend and supporter, it was so fun. So we did a whole event here in New York together and a collab recipe. And Gaby's such a pro. She's been doing this for like over 10 years and she has her whole team set up. And I learned so much from her and I'm so inspired by her. And I feel like I have so much work to do when I see how she works.
Oh, that's so sweet. I wonder, did you have to fight for the microphone?
No. Oh my God. No.
Really natural.
We're so not like that. No, we were tossing the mic back and forth to each other.
I love that.
Yeah, I have yet to really come across someone as sort of like refreshing and real and authentic as Gaby. Like she's so special. She's really great.
So let's talk a little bit about the launching of GrossyPelosi.
Yeah.
We need to hear a little bit more about the new cookbook, which you showed a moment ago.
Yes.
But for our listeners who may not be familiar or are just getting to know you,
Yeah.
let's set the stage just a little bit.
Totally.
Where does Grossy come from, and how did the brand kind of come together?
Totally. I mean, I've been going sort of by the nickname GrossyPelosi since college, which is when the Drew Barrymore movie. Yeah, it's been about 20 years. It's from the Drew Barrymore movie Never Been Kissed, where she was called Josie Grossy. And my friends in college were all drunk and started calling me GrossyPelosi. And I was like, oh my gosh, that is so funny. I love it. Because it's like, self-deprecating and silly and kind of shakes down any seriousness. I'm not a very like serious, cerebral person. I sort of just like to have a nice time. Those two things can also exist at the same time.
Sure.
But yeah, so GrossyPelosi was sort of became like my MySpace, my Friendster, my Instagram handle. And then GrossyPelosi, sort of the GrossyPelosi brand started right at the beginning of the pandemic. I had around 3,000 or 4,000 Instagram followers. I spent most of my adult years, I'm 41 now. I spent most of my adult years and my childhood really just in the kitchen. When I wasn't working, I was a creative director for brands and experiential retail for brands for years. When the pandemic hit, I went from sort of spending the weekends cooking and having friends over to working from home and cooking every single meal every day of the week. And I was quickly realized that sort of the way that I was raised, which was to stay home, make my home very comfortable, make my home very inviting, have my pantry stocked, and know how to make a meal out of kind of anything, and be really comfortable at home. Those things all allowed me to help people during a really difficult time who did not have those strengths in their sort of like arsenal because they grew up in a very different way than I did. And with my marketing and design background, I realized by listening to people that I had a lot to share and people wanted to know. So I sort of quickly made GrossyPelosi a bit of like a formal thing. And I made a logo and I did some merch and I started raising money for LGBTQ elders because they were super at risk during the pandemic. And then I launched a website and started formally writing recipes. And I started working with brands and different people reached out and I got a book agent and then I got a book deal. And so it's just sort of been like a flood ever since. And it's really just so cool. And I'm so grateful that I've been able to take my sort of lived experience and turn it into a career, And
then from where you got your influence, I've read about Bimpy. Can we talk about Bimpy? Are you okay?
We can talk about Bimpy. I literally Bimpy. The reason why I was 5 minutes late to this phone call is because Bimpy called me. And when Bimpy calls me, you have to pick up.
You take it. Yeah.
I knew you would understand.
And I did.
Yeah. So Bimpy's my grandfather. He's 101.
Wow.
And he's sort of the king meatball, the head meatball.
The head meatball.
Yeah.
So he's your idol. He's your idol.
He's definitely my idol. I think, he's my last living grandparent. His wife, my grandma Catherine, was also such an incredible cook and chef or cook and mother. And she was not a chef. I very much keep chefs and home cooks in different spaces. And I'm a home cook. But Bimpy is alive and hysterical and just has the best energy and loves food. And in his heyday would make hundreds of meatballs and stick them in the freezer and was always cooking. And I'm going to go visit him tomorrow and take him to lunch, because it's like Wednesday and I am a little bit, missing him. So yeah, he's just the best.
Was there any influence? I've read that you almost went to culinary school, but you decided to pursue a career in design, right? Mm-hmm. Also a creative outlook, right? Yeah. Chefs are artists and you have to be an artist in the design world.
Yeah. I almost went to culinary school and then I went to design school, but those two things have both led me to where I am now. So
Yeah, but you're super, super humble. I mean, you did work for brands like Gap and Ann Taylor. So
oh yeah.
tell us more.
I mean, I loved my career as a creative director and a creative. I worked for Nike and some really incredible brands, and I studied architecture, but I was always interested in branding as a whole. I love connecting with the customer. I love understanding what we're selling and who we're selling it to. I love creating spaces and experiences. So I'm really lucky that the world of experiential marketing, which is really what I considered myself, came to be during my sort of prime of my late 20s and 30s, pop-ups and Nike having things called energy events, where it was like just about the energy of the event. So I was having the best time just designing and working with the team to build these spaces. And I moved to New York about 9 years ago and started working for Ann Taylor and helped them launch a whole new brand. And I was doing store design and leading big teams and launching initiatives. And it's just so fun. And now I feel like I'm the creative director of GrossyPelosi, but we have a much smaller team and we all work a lot harder, but it's really fun.
Well, I'm a lot of students will listen to this, and we do have career changers as well who need to somehow channel that energy into what let's say their ultimate passion always has been, and that is cooking. So I'm really interested in kind of hearing how your background in design influence still to this day influences your food and the way you cook and what you like to cook.
Gosh, absolutely. I mean, I think all of it is driven by my aesthetic. It's colorful, it's bright, it's exciting, it's very imperfect. And I think that that is what creates sort of my brand. It's playful. And so I think about not just what the food will look like, but what I'm going to serve it in, what the linens, what the knife, what the fork, what the whole experience is going to be. And that's been like that my whole life. I mean, like I redecorated my entire parents' like living room, dining room when I was a kid. I redecorated my bedroom. They would let me paint on the walls. I've been photographing food since the beginning of the iPhone. I just am always sort of in pursuit of aesthetic pleasure. And I think that comes from all my interests combined. And I think it's really just about allowing yourself to take up space, like I would force my friends not to eat their food for 2 minutes so I could snap a picture. And I was doing that for 8 years. And now I'm like, hey, guess whose career is to do this? So, okay, all that practice, it paid off. And, I was sort of pretending I had an audience when I didn't, because I just felt like I had something to say. And I allowed myself to do that. And I think that's some of my, some of the most creative and successful people that I know spend years pursuing their passion. And eventually, hopefully, it pays off in some way, whether it's to the 3 eyeballs or 3 million eyeballs. It's all valid. So,
no, I love the advice, the experience when a guest comes into a restaurant or even into your home. The food is certainly center plate, but it's everything else. It's their surroundings, the type of chair, the glassware, the stuff. Yeah.
But I think when everything feels really real and really authentic, that comes from a deep within a person, not like a corporation. So
fully agree. You said something earlier, Dan, that was really, really thoughtful. You did a lot of work during the pandemic to help others kind of get through whatever they needed to get through. Maybe they didn't know how to stock a pantry or cook a meal or just smile, right? Whatever it was. I'm curious how your decision to full on going to your brand during the pandemic, how did that help you? Just you personally? I always tell people when they thank me, because I still get thanked by people daily for helping them get through that experience. And, some people are still very much going through the pandemic, even though it's over, allegedly. So it helped me because,
I was a single person I lived with two roommates who were a couple. They were very lovely. I drove them completely crazy, but I was also going through the pandemic. I was feeling all the things. I was anxious. I was isolated. I was worried about all the people in my family. I've suffered, some losses of family members. And having that connectivity and that drive and that creative sort of license during the pandemic got me through as well. So we sort of all got each other through. I'm deeply grateful that it sort of changed the entire trajectory of my life. And I know that it was from a lot of hard work and a lot of intentional thinking and in doing, but it helped me immensely in every way possible,
Well said. Well said. It's funny as I started to prep for our chat and calm my anxiety and my excitement at the same time.
You had anxiety when you got on this call. I was like a hot mess, and you were like, "I'm so nervous," and I was like, "Cool, I have egg yolk in my beard."
But I finally just had to stop because every time I turned the page, there was something else. So I came across your house tour on Homeworthy, where you were. You opened the door to your beautiful home and, it became super vulnerable. It's like, come on in. And so tell me about that, because what I noticed right away was comfort. I noticed vibrant colors, and I noticed not just the food, but all of the stuff that you need to, bowls and plates and cups. I mean, who does not feel comfortable in your home?
Hopefully everyone does. And I think that's always kind of like I grew up in homes that were designed for gathering, it was about come over to our house after this, the whole coffee and experience, right? Like, oh, we're going to dinner, come over for coffee and so, and it was always my house, or then, Aunt Maria, the other Aunt Maria's house. And so I think by extension, I've always tried to create those things, those experiences, and have the tools. And I also, I have the sort of like the gay wallet, so it allows me to buy even more because I just spend way too much money. And I don't mean the gay wallet means I have a lot of money. I think the gay wallet means that it's a little bit, the money doesn't stay in as tightly as it should. So my aesthetic pursuit drives sort of me buying way too many bowls and objects and platters and art and blanket.
Well, it's like a design showroom. It's amazing.
Yeah, I like to design in collections. So I have my art collection on one wall, my textile collection, my ceramic collection. So it feels almost like a little prop house, but also a house.
Well, I love the comments about your aunts, right? So what do you what's your take on I'm right there with you. I grew up in a European household, and so at a moment's notice, whether it was grandma or mom, they were ready to host. I mean, out of nowhere, there could be an apple strudel. I mean, just like,
no, absolutely. 100%.
But I don't know if it's an East Coast thing, a Europe thing, or a West thing, but I see on occasion where, the friend will call or, hey, we're coming over. And rather than them being ready for us, they're like, hey, can you stop and pick up a pizza? Which is fine. But
I love too. Yeah, for sure.
Either is good, but are we getting back to that, or have we lost our way in a sort of way that we're not ready to host at a moment's notice?
One thing I've learned about the world through this experience is like we all just come from such different experiences, and there's a lot of great uniters, and there's no way that you could ever assume that someone had the same experience as you did. So I have gone to people's houses who say, hey, come over for dinner at 7. And I get there at 7 and they're still pulling groceries out of the shopping bag. And I'm like, oh, we're not going to eat till 10 because you're making a roast chicken. Right. And like, if I tell you to come over at 7, like we're eating at 7:10 and then I'm kicking you out at 9:30, like, so I don't know what we're getting back to or what's happening. I mean, it's because it's like, who knows? I do know that my energy is very much that. It's like there's 2 chapters in my book that are all about having sort of a hero recipe on hand in the freezer, in the fridge, so that at a moment's notice, you can make a lasagna or you can make some cinnamon rolls or whatever, because I know that makes me happy. If you come to my house, you will be fed, and you may have just eaten a 5-course meal, but I will put food in front of you. But you'll also go to other people's houses and they'll barely make you a glass of water. So, and all of those things are valid, right? Because what I love about going to people's homes is seeing how they live their life. And while I may have raging anxiety sitting at your house with no food or drink in front of me, that's okay. It's just, I was raised differently.
Oh my gosh.
Does that make sense?
It makes total sense, and it's appreciated. You've mentioned that you live in a rainbow and that your motto is to live, laugh, and love.
Yes.
I'm wondering how those concepts stay with your food consistently.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think like I always tell people with my food, like with my food, with your food, people always want a recipe to be validated. I get asked for permission by everyone all the time. Grossy, can I use canned corn in your fresh corn tomato pasta? And I'm like, why are you asking me? Like, yeah, you can. Who's watching you? And I say that not because I'm annoyed. I'm just like, give yourself a break. Like, give yourself the freedom. Like, you don't have canned corn. You don't have fresh corn. Use canned corn. It's corn. Like, it's fine. You don't have corn. Use something else. So I think like that's kind of like the live. Like, don't put a wall in between you and the food or the recipe. Like, it doesn't matter if you nailed it the same way that I did. Did you eat it? Great. You're living, you're eating, you're breathing. We're happy. I think the laughing for me comes from like the nostalgia, the sense of humor, like the sort of like way that I write about my recipes, some of the ways that I name my recipes. I think that, people, when they started reading my recipes, which I didn't start writing recipes until June of 2020, like formally, they were like, you are writing these recipes as if you're standing in the kitchen next to me, just hanging out and teaching me how to cook. And I was like, okay, that is exactly how I learned how to cook. So that makes total sense. And I need to really hero that, because I think it puts people at ease, hopefully, when they're cooking alongside someone who perhaps they respect or think they know what they're doing. And also, if you throw a few, zingers in there, it kind of shakes down their nerves. So that's kind of been the laugh of it all. And then I think the love is really just kind of the moments where we're kind of like, I'm sharing those really emotional moments with my family, or people are sharing emotional moments through my recipes about their family. The best thing that's ever happened to me in the past 3.5 years is someone reached out to me around the holidays, because holiday cookies are a big thing for me. And they said, Grossy, I just need you to know that my grandma died and she took her peanut butter blossom recipe with her to the grave. And I made your recipe for my family. And we all decided that your recipe is now grandma's recipe. Oh. And I was just like, I'm done. Like that, like what more for me could I possibly want than to hear that? Like if I can bring back your grandmother's cookie from the grave and you now take my recipe and call it grandma's recipe, like there you go.
You're good. Mission accomplished. Yeah. Speaking of which, a pragmatic example, a real example is that Gretchen makes the viral vodka sauce is what I call it. But she's done it with the coconut, right?
Yeah.
And what I appreciate is that, to your point, it's up to you. I mean, you can make it this traditional way, or you can go over here and do the coconut way, right?
So I'm happy if you're in the kitchen, and if I've sort of like been the carrot on the string to get you into the kitchen, then like that is enough for me. I do not need you to follow my recipe exactly, like play around. I do tell people who are anxious or nervous about cooking that you really should follow a recipe as written the first time. Just because that chef has made it, or that cook has made it so that you learn how to make that recipe as intended. Now, whether or not you do that is fine with me, but I think then you could go off and that person may understand better if frozen corn or fresh corn or canned corn could work in the recipe because you've experienced the recipe as intended. I do love, in sort of a perfect world, which doesn't exist, that people would do that. But I also would never want to stop someone from eating my recipe because they don't have fresh corn. Like, use the canned corn. Go for it. So
where did the grocery list come from? I can make it up, but for those who aren't familiar with it, I mean, it's brilliant. It's brilliant.
So the grocery list came from, it really came out of function for me. I was so fortunate that everything I did, I used, I spoke of, I showed, I would be like, this tape is in the corner of a photo. And people are like, where's that tape from? And it just became like link after link after link. So I immediately, when I was building a website, I was like, I need to have like my faves. Like I need a list. So if someone says, Grossy, where's that tape from? I can say it's on the grocery list, right? It's on the grocery list. It's on the grocery list. And I just thought I love a pun. So I just put the two S's instead of the C and called it the grocery list. And now it's like my friends make fun of me, like when we're all hanging out on Fire Island or whatever. And I'll be like, where's the salt? And they'll be like, it's on the grocery
list.
So I built my own prison.
Perfect segue to talk about your debut cookbook, Let's Eat. Recipes to fill your heart and your home. I believe that by the time our chat airs, the book will be available for purchase online, Barnes and Nobles, Target, Walmart. I pre-ordered mine. I have to share that Gaby, your dear friend, and we adore her. Here's what she said. You can feel his passion for food and life shine through on every single page. Let's Eat is filled to the brim with recipes to nourish your family, your friends, and most importantly, yourself. How sweet is that? Right?
So sweet.
Is that what you want that book to be?
I do. I think everyone who I asked some friends, and I reached out to some people who I didn't really know to blurb the book, and everyone just really got it. One of my favorite ones, if I can read it, comes from Busy Phillips, who I've been following. Do you know who Busy Phillips is?
No.
Oh, she's an actress, and I've been following her on Instagram. She has kind of a relentless Instagram presence that I sort of love. And she says, my dreams of cooking like the adorable Italian grandma I never had have been realized thanks to Dan's gorgeous and hilarious cookbook. And I was like, that's exactly it. So there's just some really great quotes, and everyone really captured that energy. And it just makes me so happy.
I was going to ask you a question to share something. So thank you for that. What about the early dismissal pot roast and zabayon?
Do you want me to talk about those recipes?
Would you please?
Yes. So I love the quick, easy, throw together at the last minute recipes, but I also love like a Sunday simmer, I call them. Like I love the whole house smells good and you're sitting around and you're cozy and you're waiting for that pot roast to come out of the oven. Now, my mother, when I was in high school, would do that, and not on the weekend, but she would do it on a weeknight. And she'd be like, we're having pot roast on a Thursday. And that took a while to be done by our 5:30 or 6 o'clock dinner time. So she would send me to school when she was making pot roast with a note that said, please let Dan out of school early. And it was because I had to go home and put the pot roast in the oven.
Unbelievable.
It is so my family's energy. I can't even. And I just love that story. So not only did I really want to make a pot roast recipe, and I'm obsessed with that one. But yeah, I had to tell that little story.
It's fun that there's stories. What I tell new instructors all the time is, I mean, when students came to culinary school 30 years ago, 20 years ago, they had to come to culinary school because that's where knowledge was kept, right? Today, knowledge is everywhere. So I ask my instructors to be facilitators of knowledge, right? Just be facilitators of knowledge. Don't get too hung up on it, right?
Yeah.
What in your mind, as let's just say you're an educator, because you're educating over 100,000 people, how do you want them to approach learning from you?
Tough
question.
No, it's not. I mean, I think like people look at me, and I say this because I know that they do. I don't say this because I want them to, but they look at everything that I have, some people, and they think that they can't have it. And there's this sense of like perfection or like I'm special. And I sort of can't scream like I'm every woman like harder enough and I'm just a regular girl. I say it to people all the time. I'm like, I have all the same access to everything that you do. Yes, brands send me things and all that stuff, but they send them to me because things are available to purchase. And, you know, I get sort of asked all the time, like, where do you get your Duke's mayonnaise? I wish I could get Duke's mayonnaise here. And I'm like, well, where are you? Like, are you in Siberia? Like, you can get, like order it online, you know? And so I think like, I'm just trying to tell people that like, one thing they can learn from me is like, you can have everything I have. Like, I'm here with you to help. I'm not here to set like, I'm not here to set expectations of perfection, right? Like, I'm not here to tell you like, you know, you've done something right or wrong. I'm not here to create recipes that make you feel bad about yourself. I'm here to just be your friend at the, your friend at the potluck. Actually, I don't go to potlucks. Your friend at the Sunday at the summer barbecue who maybe brought the best potato salad but wants to share the recipe with you. Like, that's me, right?
Yeah.
So I think that mistakes are the way to learn. I mean, when I make recipes and I test them, the only way I know what's good is to know what's bad, right? So it's like, if you make the vodka sauce once and it doesn't work, like, that's great. Now you know what's wrong. Text me or DM me. I'll help you out. Like, you know, so I think it's like, I'm right there with you. I'm failing as much as you're failing. Failure is how you learn. Like, take a break. Like, there's a lot of other hard things to do in life. Feeding yourself and having a nice time with your friends and family should not be one of them.
That's a great way to be a mentor. Tell us a little bit about how Food 52 came about, the secret sauce.
Oh yeah, so I love Food 52. They're a great sort of like food media company, and they had approached me about working together. I did some YouTube episodes of their sort of like cooking in the home or in your kitchen, where I made some food in my kitchen. And then we were talking about doing a YouTube series, and they asked me if I would be willing to host something that wasn't about my recipes, that was about other people's recipes, because they were really looking to shine a light on their community. Food 52 is all about community recipes. That's how they started. Every recipe on the site is contributed by community members. And I thought, wow, that's exactly what I want to do. I want to go to community members' homes, and I want them to teach me their family recipe in the same way that I was talking about standing next to someone and learning from them in the kitchen, you know? And I also just love people's houses and peeking around and holding a picture of their grandmother and sobbing and, you know, so I just thought it was so fun to do that. And so that's what the premise of the show is. It's going to different community members, different cooks, and really learning their favorite family recipe and more from them, and taking up space, walking through the door and saying, I live here now, you know. And I take up emotional, physical, and other space. So
no, I love it. What about this two-shell pasta? Oh, I've got a whole list for you. What happened?
I love it. I told you you're going to need a safe word because I'll talk forever. So this could be a two-parter. My air conditioning is on, and I'm hydrated, and I have a tan, so I'm unstoppable.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
So this two-shell pasta. So I mentioned earlier, as soon as the pandemic started and people started finding me, they quickly realized that I have sort of a language and a way of sort of existing that they wanted part of, and they were like, where's the Grossy merch? Like, I want Grossy merch. And merch is, you know what merch is. It's like merch from a brand or from like whatever, or sports team. And I was like, okay, so here I am, there's a global pandemic, we're like a month in, I have a full-time job in a corporation. I'm fine. I'm working from home. I'm building this second career. I didn't really know at the time that I was, but it felt like something was happening. I was gaining all these Instagram followers. And I was like, I can't sell merch for profit. That would be absolutely insane of me. Like, there's so many people that need help. So I decided to sell merch to support an organization called Sage, which I knew about because of a program called Sage Table. Sage is an organization. It's the nation's oldest and largest organization that supports LGBTQ elders. So global pandemic, this is their second global pandemic after AIDS, which was their first global pandemic, which if they're a gay elder, they survived that, which is just mind-blowing to think about that. And now they're, 2 times less likely to have a partner, 4 times less likely to have children. So how are they being supported during the pandemic? So Sage is the organization that was feeding them, that was providing services, getting them medication. So I said, okay, if people want merch, I'm going to use the light that's on me to raise money. So I came up with the phrase, "this too shall pasta," as sort of a "this too shall pass." And kind of the connection and the community through food will help us get through this pandemic. And the shirt just took off, and I've been selling variations of it now for 3.5 years, and we've raised like almost $70,000 for Sage, which is really like makes me just so happy and honored. So
no, it's absolutely beautiful, Dan. I mean,
cool.
truly. I wanted to ask if you're okay with sharing, not necessarily secrets, but words of wisdom, right? So
yeah,
we have students from all walks of life who will listen to this episode and be inspired by you and our teachers. And I'm not trying to suggest for 1 second that it's easy, but they'll say, I want to write a cookbook, or they want to do something, they want to be an influencer, they want to do something really meaningful. What words of advice? It's a lot of work, and I'm going to assume that most people understand that. But what words of advice would you give to someone who's at least thinking about, maybe I don't want to stand behind the line, I'd like to do something different in the hospitality industry?
I mean, I think the words of advice that I have from them is to just do it. I mean, there is no secret sauce, right? Like, you have to do. You can't sit around and think about it.
Just do it. Yeah.
And like prove for yourself the concept, right? Like proof of concept. And I think, I made a decision at the end of 2019, which was a really hard year for me, for a couple of reasons. I won't get into them. And I was depressed. I mean, my therapist was like, "You're depressed." And I was like, okay, what can I do to turn the boat around? And I had the knowledge that I loved food, and I had an Instagram. I had my Instagram, which was free. It didn't cost me anything. And I was like, okay, I'm going to stop taking pictures of like butterflies and things that I find on the street and like paintings. And I'm going to really focus my Instagram on food. This was December of 2019 when I threw my cookie party. And I realized at my cookie party, which was like my 6th or 7th year of doing it, I was like, this is just such the best day of the year. I should really just kind of like, in my spare time, focus my energy on food and see what happens. Little did I know that 4 months later, there would be a global pandemic, and I was setting myself up for everything to change. But it was really just an emotional and an intentional shift to make myself happier, to just focus on food, because I knew that that was the one thing that kind of gave me joy without a doubt, right? Whether I drop the cake on the floor, or if I eat the whole thing in the dark crying, or I'm eating it celebrating with my friends, right? Like, it brought me some sort of sense of peace. So that was it. I mean, that's what happened. And then everything else just took off from there. And I know it sounds magical and woo-woo, but it's like, I located my joy, and then I decided to spend more time focusing on it. And that was it. And I didn't sit there and just think about it. I did it,
Just do it. Yeah.
Ask me about my fitness routine and it'll be the opposite. But, I think, like, for me, I was able to do that, and I acted on it, and it paid off. So
no, that's absolutely wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Now we know about the book.
Yes.
Is there anything else you can share that you were? I mean, I don't know how you're busy. How do you get another project going? Is there a movie coming out?
Ah, Rosie O'Donnell is playing me in my autobiography.
Okay.
No, I've had some stuff. You know, I've got all kinds of fun stuff happening. I have my book tour, which I'm focusing a lot on. I really, this year is about my book for me. You know, I want this book to sell. I want to write a lot more books. I've really focused managing on that. I've got some fun brand partnerships coming up. I just moved. So the apartment that you saw in my home tour is no longer where I live. I moved in with my boyfriend into a very sweet little place a block away. And I am, one thing that's a secret that people will know about, but when this comes out, is that I'm buying a home in upstate New York, which I'm going to sort of like hopefully turn it over time because it takes money, turn into a really fun space to continue to cook and grow the GrossyPelosi experience. So
wonderful. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
It's been a goal of mine for forever. So I'm really
I love it.
to be able to. So yeah, that's the secret. Secret's out.
I got the secret. I've got it written down.
Yeah.
So Dan, the name of the podcast, this is probably the toughest question of all, or maybe the easiest question. The name of the podcast is The Ultimate Dish.
Yeah.
So in your mind, what is the ultimate dish? And there was no prep for this. There was no prep, but I knew you were going to say meatballs, right?
Yeah, meatballs. I mean, it just is like, you know, I self-identify as a meatball. It is my gender. And I also think, you know, it's just so like, it's just, you know, I love it. You get your hands in it. You mix the meat, you form the balls, you cook them and you let them simmer in the sauce and the flavor grows and they taste better over time. And, you know, I've got a couple different variations of meatballs. I've got a vegetarian meatball in the book and, you know, everyone puts different things in them. And I love how controversial the fact that I put raisins in mine is and everyone freaks out about it. And I just think they're a unifier. You can make a sandwich, you can have for breakfast, you can throw them at someone. They're just so fun. And I love them. And I love that I call Bimpy up and he's like, I'm making 100 meatballs. You know what I mean? It's just like ridiculous. So meatballs the whole idea makes me happy.
That's the ultimate dish. Where's the raisins? Where's that come from? Raisins.
So it's a family thing on my end, but it's a Sicilian to put raisins and pine nuts in your meatballs.
Okay.
We did not, in my family, we did not do pine nuts. But we do raisins and I love it. It's a savory, sweet sort of surprise. People are very passionate about raisins. It's actually why I started saying, don't yuck my yum, because people got so freaking like rude about the fact that I put raisins in. Meanwhile, it's like, you just leave them out. And I think, the raisins are a very special family thing for me. And I think people are skeptical or they're in right from the beginning. And either way, it's fine. And if you leave the raisins out, that's great too. But yeah. There you go.
I love it. What a fun chat. Dan, congratulations on all the success, the new house, the book, and everything. I was going to just emphasize live, laugh, and love. What a blast this has been.
Can I just thank you so much? I just want to say it's now live, laugh, love, and buy my book. That's the fourth part.
Oh my God. I love it.
But thank you. I had to say that, obviously, if it wasn't implied.
Absolutely perfect. And thank you from my family, Gretchen, and everybody. All the students are going to have so much fun. Thank you for listening to the Ultimate Dish Podcast, brought to you by Auguste Escoffier School of Culinary Arts. Visit escoffier.edu/podcast, where you'll find any materials mentioned during the podcast, including notes, links, and other resources. You can also browse other episodes and subscribe.